It is exactly 2 minutes past 9. This is Smart Means Business. Andrew Barigi, and welcome to the Business Insight. Now, a very amazing discussion updates that have been coming up. The private sector is demanding interest on government loans. Now, the government areas spiral out of control, and this is a looming threat to Uganda's economic stability. Now, Uganda's fiscal landscape is actually taking a concerning turn as government payables surge, that is to unprecedented levels. Now, according to the Auditor General's latest report, domestic areas rose sharply from 10 trillion in the year 2020-2023 financial year to about 13 trillion by the end of 2023-2024 financial year. Now, this marks a staggering 31.5% increase, that is in a single financial year, raising red flags about the government's financial discipline and the impact that is on the economy at large. Now, senior economist, that is John Walugembe, has drawn attention that is to the cascading effects of the government delayed debt repayments. Now, when the private sector lends, this is what it says, that when the private sector lends money to the government, it is essentially extending loans loans that should accrue interest like any other financial obligation. Delayed payments destabilize the financial health of the private business. This is what, according to what Walugembe said. Now, this phenomenon is not new, but has become increasingly pronounced. Now, in 2018, delays in clearing debts forced multiple small and medium-sized enterprises to scale down operations. Now, a notable example is a local construction firm that is in Wakiso that was owed about 1.2 trillion Ugandan shillings, that is by the government. Now, this is something that wasn't good. Now, unable to sustain operations, the company laid off about 75% of its workforce, and it halted the ongoing projects. Such cases, they definitely illustrate the direct and immediate impact of government areas on the employment and community well-being. Now, Tororo County legislator, that is Godfrey Kanyu, attributes the swelling domestic areas to the government's overly ambitious financial targets. Now, he specifically cites Uganda's commercial oil project as the standard gauge railway as key to this. Say that these are mega projects with enormous budgets, but they often fail to materialize within the projected timelines, leaving the government struggling to settle domestic areas. This is according to what I say. Now, the SGR project, envisioned as a game changer, that is for Uganda's transport infrastructure, has actually faced significant delays and budget overruns. Meanwhile, the commercial oil project, originally expected to generate billions in revenue, that is by 2023, has yet to deliver on its promise, and these unfulfilled ambitions have left a trail of unpaid obligations that further erode the private sector confidence. Now, according to the economists, they believe that a pattern of poor fiscal discipline is what is leading Uganda at this state. Now, economists urge that Uganda's financial woes are deeply rooted in systematic issues such as poor fiscal discipline, weak revenue collection, and inadequate payment systems. Now, the URA has consistently failed to meet its annual revenue collection targets, falling short by 3.5 trillion in the financial year 2023-2024. So you can imagine that is a huge shortfall. Now, this shortfall excavates the government's inability to clear its debts. Now, moreover, a procurement inefficiency continue to drain the public resources. Now, in 2022, the Inspector General of Government uncovered fraudulent procurement practices amounting to over 450 billion Ugandan shillings. Now, such practices not only inflate the costs, but also delay the payments, and also especially when it comes to the legitimate contractors and service providers. Now, what is the ripple effect to the private sector? If you take a look at this, such a scenario. Now, the mounting areas have a domino effect on the private sector, particularly small and intermediary enterprises, which form the backbone of Uganda's economy. Now, when businesses fail to receive timely payments for goods and services rendered to the government, their cash flow is severely impacted. Now, this often leads to layoffs, reduced production capacity, and in some cases, permanent closure. Now, of course, you can consider a case study of a local agro-processing company in Gulu that supplied maize flour to government schools under Universal Primary Education Program. Now, the company was owed about 800 million Ugandan shillings for moreover just a year, forcing to shut down its operations and leave hundreds of farmers without a market for their produce. Now, such stories are not isolated incidents, but a part of a larger trend that undermines economic resilience. Now, adding to the crisis are the delayed interest payments on overdue dates. Now, these delays not only strain the relationships with the creditors, but also increase the overall cost of borrowing. Now, a report by the Bank of Uganda reveals that the interest on domestic areas rose by 12% in the financial year 2023-2024, further deepening the the fiscal crisis. Now, one glaring example is the government's delayed payment on the local banks for treasury bonds. You can imagine that the government's so it's like the public is actually losing trust and confidence in the Ugandan government when it comes to paying back the interest, even if we to look at the treasury bills and bonds. So, are we going to say that the narrative that the government is the safest place to lend, it doesn't work for the Ugandan government? I'm trying to imagine that. I don't want to think it that way, but it's kind of the scenario that is being presented. With time, people might lose trust. And what happens when people start buying the treasury bills and bonds? Definitely the government won't have enough money to run the economy. And that will come back to us because it will mean that the only way to get the money will be to impose no taxes. The good news is that the government says no taxes for 2025. Well, but let's wait and see what that really turns about. But it's not a good image if the public starts to lose the trust in the government when it comes to paying back loans and also the interest on the treasury bills and bonds. That is a big question. Personally, I'm also scared. Now, one glaring example, like we say, was the government's delayed payment to the local banks' treasury bonds, which actually created liquidity challenges within the banking sector. Now, when the government delays payments, it affects our ability to extend credit to other borrowers. This according to the SME's senior executive at a leading commercial bank. One gentleman made that statement. Now, what are some of the proposed solutions according to the experts? Now, economists and policymakers are calling for immediate action to address the spiraling domestic areas. Now, the key recommendations include implementation of a transparent payment schedule to establish a clear and public timeline of settling the areas to rebuild trust. That is with the creditors. That is part of the suggestions. Now, the experts also say that enhancing revenue collection, is part of the key aspects. That the government should invest in digital tools and data analytics to improve tax compliance and also broaden the tax base. That's according to what the experts are urging the government. Now, there is allocating sufficient budgetary resources whereby they should prioritize debt repayment in the national budget to prevent further escalation areas. So these are part of the solutions that the experts are actually posing towards the government. Now, I'll say this, that Uganda can actually draw lessons from countries that have successfully managed their similar challenges. For instance, Ghana's data exchange program. This was in 2023. Now, during that year 2023, it restructured domestic debt by swapping existing bonds for new ones with longer maturities and lower interest rates. So that is what the government of Ghana did. But the challenge is that when you put bonds that have a low return, in most cases are cheap, they're not so expensive. If you could buy it at about 100 million, you might have to buy it now at about 90 million, 30 million. And this is just part of the suggestions by the economic experts saying that let us establish new bonds, with cheaper returns, with lower interest rates and a prolonged maturity date. So that means if we had the shortest bond running for 3 years, now we shall have it running for about 5 years, being the shortest bond. Then we shall be having, sorry, a 15-year-old bond. Then also shall be proceeding along with a 20-year-old bond. I'm just trying to imagine. This is what the government did in Ghana. In 2023, the government of Ghana restructured domestic debt by swapping existing bonds for new ones with longer maturities and lower interest rates. Now, this approach alleviated immediate liquidity pressures and restored the confidence in the government's fiscal management. Now, closer to home, just here in Rwanda, Rwanda's robust public financial management system has been instrumental in maintaining fiscal discipline. Now, the country's adoption of an integrated financial management information system has actually significantly reduced payment delays and enhanced accountability. Now, the call to action. Now, the failure to address the growing domestic areas could have far-reaching consequences way beyond undermining the private sector trust, but it also risks triggering a broad economic crisis that is characterized by reduced investment, a rising unemployment, and a slowing GDP growth. That is what is likely to come out of that. Now, as Uganda grapples with this challenge, the need for decisive action cannot be overstated. Now, the policymakers must prioritize fiscal discipline, transparency, and accountability to restore economic stability and ensure that every Ugandan directly or indirectly benefits from a thriving economy. That is their wish in that line. All right, now, away from that, let's take a look at the traders' issues here. The traders' plight. In 2024, the lingering shadows of EFRIS and Uganda's tax policies. EFRIS was one of those incidents. I remember I covered that incident way back in downtown. It was last year around April. It was just after Easter when the traders decided to lock down the shops because they were saying the EFRIS is more like a double taxation. When the goods are coming in from imported at the coast, they have to pay some charges. They pay duties to Uganda Revenue Authority, and the same Uganda Revenue Authority comes to their shops and is still collecting taxes. And they weren't really understanding this whole scenario. And actually, majority thought that maybe EFRIS is a tax, but EFRIS is not a tax. It is a form of collecting tax, but in a digital form. Let me say it that way. Now, as 2024 unfolded, many Ugandan traders continued to lament the scars of the turbulent year marked by the policy mistakes, confusion, and frustration. Now, while some progress has actually been made in addressing their grievances and lingering the impact on the Uganda Revenue Authority's introduction of the EFRIS in 2023, it remains some kind of a cautionary tale of how well-intentioned reforms can actually spiral into chaos without adequate consultation. Now, when the Uganda Revenue Authority rolled out the EFRIS as a tool to improve tax compliancy and combat evasion, it was heralded as a milestone in Uganda's journey toward a more formalized economy. Yet many traders in downtown, the system became an emblem of oppression. Now, miscommunication about its purpose and functionality showed confusion, culminating in a widespread shop closures as traders protested against its implementation. Now, John Kabanda, the chairman of the Federation of Uganda Traders Association, recalls the turmoil vividly. This is what he said, and that is exactly what you're seeing on screen. This is what he said, that our businesses were paralyzed because we didn't understand how to use the system. And instead of educating us, the government treated us like tax evaders. Now, it felt like we were being punished for being the backbone of this economy. Now, that is what the chairman said here of FUTA, that is John Kabanda. That's what he said. Now, for the traders, the introduction of the EFRIS wasn't just an administrative hurdle, but it was a matter of survival. Many small, medium-sized enterprises already grappling with ripple effects of the post-pandemic recovery found themselves at the mercy of a system they neither trusted nor understood. Now, stories of traders shutting down their shops, struggling to meet the compliance demands, and facing penalties became a commonplace. It was very common. Now, the spokesperson for the Kampala City Traders Association, that is CACITA, offers a sobering reflection in regards to this. This is what he said. This is what he said. When you think of the chaos caused by the EFRIS, it is not just about the system. It is about the livelihoods disrupted, the families that were hungry, and the trust that was lost between the government and its people. That's what the person said. And it's one of the aspects of being talking about losing confidence in the government. That is the worst place a citizen or a native of any country could actually ever reach to. Now, fast forward to 2024, and there were signs of progress. Following the multiple engagements with the president and key government officials, some of the traders' grievances have been actually addressed. Reports from trader leadership indicate that implementation of the EFRIS has actually improved, with better training and support provided to businesses. Additionally, contentious issues like the so-called night tax on clothing traders has actually been reconsidered, signaling a shift towards a more tax trader-friendly policies. Now, of course, Kevin still acknowledges that the strides made, but remains cautiously optimistic. This is what he said, that the situation is better than last year, but challenges remain. We still face oppressive practices, especially from the landlords who exploit the tenants. The Uganda Revenue Authority must work more closely with us. That's what he said. And we're not just the taxpayers, we're partners building this economy. That is what the traders say. Now, the plight of the traders in Uganda definitely is emblematic of the broader systematic issues in the country's economic landscape. I'll say this. Now, as the heart of these challenges lies with the delicate balance between the raising revenue and fostering an enabling environment for business to thrive. As the government prepares its budget for 2024-2025 fiscal year, traders are urging the policymakers to prioritize fairness and inclusivity. Period. That's what the calling upon the government for. Now, data from the WUBUS reveals that small and intermediary enterprises contribute over 50% of the country's GDP and employ nearly 80% of the workforce. Yet, these enterprises often bear the brunt of tax policies that disproportionately favor larger corporations or foreign investors. For instance, while local traders grapple with compliance issues, foreign-owned companies benefit from tax holidays and incentives that undermine the local competition. Now, Uganda's experience with EFRIS offers definitely valuable lessons for the future policy implementation. And of course, a case study from Kenya's rollout of its tax system that was in 2015 highlights its importance of stakeholder engagement. Unlike Uganda, Kenya's tax authority invested heavily in public awareness campaigns, user-friendly interfaces, and responsive support systems. Now, as a result, the compliance rates improved without alienating the taxpayers. Now, closer to home, still in Rwanda, I cannot give examples and leave out Rwanda. Now, Rwanda's approach to business taxation provides a compelling example of how technology can actually be leveraged to simplify compliance while building trust. Now, by integrating digital tools with extensive capacity building programs, Rwanda has managed to enhance tax revenue without triggering a widespread resistance from its business community. Now, a call for action. What is the way forward? What is the way forward? Now, as Uganda charts its path forward, the voices of traders must not be ignored. Now, key priorities for the government should actually include, according to what the experts say, strengthening trader-government collaboration, strengthening the trader-government collaboration. So the government should collaborate with the traders, in other words. Now, establishing platforms for regular dialogue between the traders, the policymakers, and tax authorities to address the concerns and foster trust. That is a part of the suggestions. Now, there is also reforming the landlord-tenant relations. Now, enacting and enforcing laws that protect tenants from exploitation while ensuring fair returns for the landlords. That is part of the way forward, according to the experts. There is also promoting equitable tax policies, ensuring that the tax incentives benefit both the local and foreign business with a focus on supporting SMEs and investing in infrastructure, addressing issues like poor road networks. Now, Kampala, currently, the constructions of roads that is happening. And congratulations to us. Congratulations to Uganda. I mean, I can't imagine just 2 years from now when these constructions are done, how is the city going to look like? So some of the aspects that are actually hindering trade are being worked on within the city center. Now, there is also leveraging on technology, of course, drawing lessons from regional successes to enhance the usability and accessibility of systems like the EFRIS. Now, the journey toward a thriving business environment in Uganda requires a collective effort. Now, we know that the traders as vital contributors to the economy. They deserve policies that empower rather than to stifle them, is what the experts say. At the same time, the government has a duty to create a fair and predictable tax regime that fosters growth and inclusivity. Now, as Commander aptly puts it, the success of Uganda's economy depends on the success of its traders. When we thrive, the nation thrives. Now, the question now is whether the government will rise to the occasion and deliver on its promises or risk further alienating the very people it relies on to drive economic growth. For Ugandans, the stakes couldn't be higher. But of course, this isn't just about the taxes or the systems, but it's about the livelihoods, dignity, and the future of our country. The future of my country, the future of your country. So that's what we're looking towards it. And surprisingly, it bothers me how we really praise a lot the foreign investors. In countries like China, actually one of the reasons as to why most of the United States firms in China are closing down businesses and they're actually shifting down in the southern part, like in India and Vietnam, is simply because their tax holidays and subsidies that the government of China gives to its investors, which is not the case with foreigners. Elon Musk has had issues with Tesla. And as we speak still, due to the incentives, you realize that there is a huge demand for Chinese products in China as compared to the United States products or any products that come from Europe that are heading to China. Why? It's because the government of China has enabled the local investors to have the essential output. Now, as we speak, most of the vehicles that are actually sold in China from the United States of America, most especially from the company known as General Motors, which makes vehicles like the Chevrolet Suburban, one of my favorite. Now, these companies actually are not making money in China. So some of them are shutting down. I told you last time that General Motors lost about $300 billion, million dollars, I think, in revenue in 2024 alone because the market is not favoring them. Chinese are buying their own vehicles manufactured in China, and the fact that most of these companies actually have also decided to stick themselves to gasoline fuel cars. Yet in China, they're already adapting the green revolution techniques, electrical cars and all that. But why is that all possible? It's because the government has given the subsidies. The tax environment is actually friendly as compared to Uganda. What we do, we actually doing the opposite of China, what China does. Well, that is it for now. Exactly 25 minutes past 9. Let's go for a short break, and I'll be returning. We shall be winding this up as we be having an insight regarding cooperative organizations as the new dawn for the traders. And this happened in Seta yesterday. I'll be back after this break and we shall be having a further discussion into this.